I want to start by telling you a secret. When I was a little boy growing up in Bogota, Colombia, I dreamed of being a pop star. I would stand in the middle of the bathroom, right in front of the mirror, holding a hairbrush, pretending that I was in the middle of my sold-out world tour. At the very least, I wanted to be the 7th member of Rebelde or the 6th Backstreet Boy. The one that gets to stand at the end and doesn't have to do very much, but still gets to be part of the group. But when I realized that my level of talent didn't quite match even this level of ambition, I set my sights on a new dream, a plan B, if you will. I was going to be the president of Colombia. And I felt called to become the president of Colombia because of what I had witnessed growing up. Every night, just as dinner was about to be ready, my grandmother would yell from across her apartment very loudly, "Vengan, vamos a ver a cuánta gente mataron hoy. Come over, let's see how many people were killed today." That was her way of calling the family into her bedroom so that we would huddle around the TV and watch the evening news. Her words, the same every single day, and the images of violence that were affecting my country had a very powerful impact on me. They were my introduction to the story of democracy, of a democracy that was failing its people. But even as a little boy, I knew that a different story had to be possible. I just believed that the limitations of our present do not define the possibilities of our future. But as I grew older and I came to terms with my queer identity, I realized that even that dream seemed like one that I was not entitled to. I did not see myself represented in popular culture. I did not see myself represented in the politicians at that time. And the stories that were told to me implicitly and explicitly made me believe that I had a choice to make between living my life authentically or serving my country. And then that brought to me a realization, a turning point, if you will, where I realized that the story of democracy was being written purposefully to exclude me and to exclude many of us. And the reason for that is because democracy has been built on a foundation of systems of exclusion, from patriarchy to colonialism to slavery. The we in We the People has never actually meant all of us. And so if we want a different future, we need a different story, because stories matter. Storytelling is the way that we go about making meaning of the world around us. It is one of those things that actually makes us human. As Rashad Robinson, the president of Color of Change, says so well, stories set the floor for what is acceptable and the ceiling for what is possible. And so at a critical moment when we're in the year of democracy or the year of elections, when the future of democracy and the future of our planet is at stake, we need to build better stories where we all belong. But as storytellers, fantastic storytellers from all around the world are trying to do that, they're met with an entertainment industry where they do not receive the support necessary to produce the films, the TV shows, and the digital content that will actually expand our horizons. In the story of us, the stories from the most marginalized communities are severely underrepresented and underfunded. And so what we're left with is a broken story, a story of us that does not actually include all of us, and that no longer serves in building a shared purpose. And unfortunately, technology is making that worse. We were told that social media was going to connect us, and instead, it has divided us far more than it has united us. Algorithms are pushing out to us hate speech, extremism, and disinformation. And we all know it. You know it. You see it every single day. You see it when you go to a family gathering and you're sitting across the table, and all of a sudden, you're debating with a loved one over a conspiracy theory. No, Aunt Betty, your children are not being groomed by the deep state from the basement of a pizzeria called Comet Ping Pong. They're busy making pizzas. But unfortunately, the negative impact of social media goes far beyond making a couple of family gatherings awkward. Social media is actually pushing out stories that make us believe that we should hate ourselves and that we should hate one another. Just take the example of Molly Russell, a British teenager who was so inundated with self-harm content that she actually died by suicide at the age of 14. She was just a teenager who wasn't even safe in her own bedroom. Her father, Ian Russell, who is now an activist, says that very little has been done since the years of Molly's passing to change the algorithms that actually prompted her tragic death. And those same negative impacts are felt most strongly by the most marginalized communities in society. Since October of 2022, we have seen an increase of 119% on tweets that seek to demonize the LGBTQIA+ community. They're branding us as the other. And the impacts of that are very real. Our community, particularly trans youth of color, are being harassed, are being threatened, and are being murdered. And just like our families are suffering and our communities are suffering, so are our democracies. We've all seen the images of the January 6th insurrection here in the Capitol, and images like this one of the January 8th coup attempts in Brasilia. Those are scenes that evoke horror movies only made possible by algorithms that spread polarization and disinformation. But if you think that these horror movies are scary, just wait for the sci-fi nightmares that are already coming with generative AI. AI companies are building their AI models by scraping even the darkest corners of the internet. And in doing so, they're feeding back to us the worst stereotypes of our past and flattening our imagination. And to add insult to injury, they're taking our faces, our voices, and our stories without even having asked us to do so, without the right to do so, and without compensation, not even for the hardworking journalists who risk their lives to tell those stories, or for the creatives that breathe life into our cultural landscape. Quite frankly, AI is warping the truth. Just see this example of what happened recently in London when a deepfake audio of Mayor Sadiq Khan started to call for demonstrations. The demonstrations started to happen and assemble as the mayor of one of the most powerful cities in the world sat there completely powerless, not being able to stop it. So the reality is that AI is taking away the very nuance and humanity of our shared story. And so I have to ask you, how can we belong in a world in which not even our voices, our faces, and our stories belong to us? Can we still leverage the power of storytelling to meet this moment in history and imagine the world that we all deserve? I think so. I think so because even in a world dominated by AI and algorithms, the power of human imagination remains unmatched. And I know about the power of human imagination firsthand, because I know that in a world that seems divided, storytelling is the glue that brings the pieces back together. When the marriage equality movement started to leverage stories of LGBTQIA families, stories of us having children, caring for aging parents, celebrating milestones, they helped support a shift in public opinion that made marriage equality the law of the land in the United States. And on June 26, 2020, on the 5th anniversary of that decision, on the steps of that very Supreme Court, I got the chance to marry my husband, Mitchell. It was a story that I never thought would be possible. And so today, as opposed to what happened when I was growing up, we have lots of stories of LGBTQIA people in politics. Stories that remind us of how far we've come and how much more change is possible. Stories such as those of Erica Hilton, the black trans congresswoman in Brazil, or Claudia Lopez, who just finished her term as the first woman and first lesbian mayor of Bogota, my hometown. And so I may have not become a pop star or president yet, But I feel honored to dedicate my life to supporting storytellers and telling stories that actually allow us to free ourselves from the shackles of our past and help us imagine the future that we deserve. Earlier this year, I collaborated with the creators of a film called Igualada. It's a documentary about the rise of Francia Márquez as the first black female vice president of Colombia. It is a story about how she beat all odds, a story I never thought that actually would be possible. And it is a story that reminds me of how much things have changed in Colombia. It will also be a story that serves as the inspiration for many more stories that are now possible because of hers. I also had the honor of working and collaborating with the creators of a documentary called The Territory, a documentary about the Uruewawa community in the Brazilian Amazon. It is a film co-produced, co-edited, and co-shot with the members of that community. The film's impact campaign actually led to international regulations to curb deforestation and to the creation of a media center in the Amazon for the Uruewawa to be able to monitor and protect their land. It is a story that resonated deeply all around the world because it is a story about the things that we all care about. It is a story about protecting our families, our homes, and our futures. That is the power of storytelling. Stories help us understand one another, they help build networks of solidarity, and they help drive collective action to see the change that we want to see in the world. But perhaps most importantly, stories allow us to dream. As Mahalia Jackson said to Martin Luther King Jr., "Tell them about the dream." The I Have a Dream speech became one of the most iconic and influential moments in civil rights history. A moment that reminds us of the power of the right story at the right time to paint a vision of possibility for millions in society. So the question for us is, what is the right story? What is the right narrative for this moment in time? I would venture to say that just as when I was a little kid in Bogota, Colombia, we are called to believe that the limitations of our past and our present do not define the possibilities of our future. We can build the world that we deserve together, but to build it, we must first imagine it. So let's invest in the narrative infrastructure that will tell the stories that haven't been heard for far too long. Let's actually produce the films and TV shows and digital media content and music that will represent the full diversity and the breadth of experiences and identities in society. And when we do so, let's tell movie theaters and streaming platforms and social media to make sure that we all get to see those stories. While we're at it, let's make sure that we change the story of technology so that it is a story about technology as a force for good, with transparent algorithms that actually are designed to connect us, and with AI models that don't flatten our imagination, but actually unlock it. And most of all, let's reimagine the story of democracy. Let's write the new chapter in that story by centering on the stories of joy and belonging and possibility that I, and I know all of you, wish that we had when we were growing up. So that finally, the we in We the People actually means all of us. And hopefully, if we do that, one day, my children will be able to dream that they can be anything they want to be, even a pop star or president. Thank you.